Good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday, October 24th to order. Welcome, everybody. And we're going to start out tonight with a couple of items. One's presentation and recognition of the City of Ames Animal Shelter and Animal Control on achieving 90% save rate for the 2022 calendar. And then we'll have a proclamation. So I'll start with the presentation. Ron, you want to come up here? Bring up the team. Sure. Ron and company. Before I read the letter and the award, just a little background. This award has been being presented to the Ames Animal Shelter by the Best Friends Animal Society, which is a national 501c3 nonprofit organization that operates the nation's largest sanctuary for homeless animals and provides adoption, spay, neuter, and educational programs. They're leading the way to reduce euthanasia in America's animal shelters through building community programs and partnerships all across the nation. And Best Friends believes that by working together, we can save them all. And so I'm going to read a letter of commendation and award that was presented to the animal shelter. Dear Ron, on behalf of Best Friends Animal Society, I want to congratulate City of Ames Animal Shelter and Animal Control on achieving a 90% save rate for the calendar year of 2022. You have joined in an elite group of organizations across the country who are leading the way towards making us a no-kill nation by saving 90% or more of the animals in your shelter. This accomplishment represents so much more than a number. It represents a culture of caring and compassion. It represents a dedicated staff, committed volunteers, and motivated supporters. It represents innovative and thoughtful programming, and it represents extraordinary leadership both within your organization and within our broader animal welfare movement. Although 90% is by definition a number, organizations that achieve and maintain no kill are made up of people who never forget that each fraction of those percentage points represents a life saved. These numbers represent cherished family members who are only alive because of your dedication and hard work. Bottom line, every day you and your team create more and more opportunities for people and animals to experience love. Please accept this plaque as a representation of your dedication, leadership, and the incredible milestone you've reached on behalf of the animals we all love. So it's my honor to present this to Ron and his team from Best Friends. Congratulations, Ron and team.
Thank you, Mayor Hala, and thank you, council members, for your amazing support. Chief Huff, we couldn't have done this without your support, the commanders. We have an incredible team here, the most compassionate people that work and care for the animals here in our community. They mean the world to me. They're all amazing. We have an amazing volunteer group. We have some of them here represented today, so I want to thank them for being here and all the work that they do to care for the animals. We couldn't do that without them and everything. Making this amazing achievement and being recognized by Best Friends is just an amazing honor. I want to point out, though, we had over a 98% live release rate, so their benchmark is 90%, and we reached 98%, over 98%. So thank you, everybody, for that and help that make that happen. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor Hala.
Thank you.
All right, and Kelly? Kelly and Company. Community Planning Month. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, counties, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas communities seek to support the quality of life for their residents and address a wide range of interests for housing, recreation, economic development, neighborhoods, sustainability, preservation, urban design, and transportation. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas the full benefits of planning require public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month provides the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions, other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Ames. Therefore, I, John A. Haley, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim the month of October to be Community Planning Month in the City of Ames and recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community planners of the City of Ames and extend heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. And I might just add, we're proud of each one of you, appreciate your efforts, and you do a lot of work on behalf of council. So Kelly, you want to introduce your staff and or make a few comments?
Yeah, so quickly, we have 3 of our 5 planners here tonight. We have Eloise, Amelia, and Benjamin. We do a lot of different things for the community, but it's really the public that it is really prompting the city council to invest in our time as a city, to plan for different elements of the city. We love working for the city. We're very committed to the efforts of the city as well. So it's our joy to work for the council and for the people of the city, and we're really happy to be here as well. Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to consent. Do any council members wish to pull any item from consent tonight? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Becker,
Oh,
Garden,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Meany Hanson.
Aye.
just give 1 second here. Can you get, is Rachel, Gloria should be on.
She's having trouble with her sound right now. Gloria, can you hear me?
Okay, we'll move on. All right, next is public forum. This is the time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. And council will not take any action on your comments. So we invite those to approach the podium, and we'll start with Richard and ask that you limit your time to 3 minutes or less. Richard, you may go ahead.
Healthiest Iowa, whatever it was, a couple of weeks ago. It's like I took one of my signs and I was at the front door of the thing, and it's like I was a volunteer doorman. That was the first time since I got that no trespassing order that I was actually there. And I kind of would like to do that some more. But it's like I don't know how. I mean, when Julia Saxton and Jeff Huff told me I couldn't be there, I got really upset, and I kind of like put it on the back burner of my thing, and I sort of, if I go back to there again, I found out that some of the people that are new for the city of Ames have go to some sort of new thing that they show other people the work there, all the things that the city does. And I know when Susan had the citizens advisory sort of thing, I tried to volunteer for that several years ago, and between Susan and Jerry Spencer, they said that I couldn't go to it, and it's like I don't spend nearly as much time now. I didn't even spend that much time that day. I mean, I took one of my dollar bills that said, "Please let us be naked," and I gave it to a father of some daughter, and it's like, let me be the first to donate to your daughter's college fund, I said.
Richard, can you focus on the item of city business, please? Thank you.
Can we?
Anybody else under public forum? Any item that's not on the agenda? If you just state your name and then you can start.
My name is Bob Haug. I live at 3517 Oakland Street.
Thank you.
I'm a member of the Ames Climate Action Team, an organization of volunteers concerned about mitigating global warming and adapting to the consequences of the carbon debt that we've already incurred. Recently, our group has been focusing on the unique connection in Ames between climate action and waste management. And we appreciate that the city has begun to consider this nexus. For example, city staff prepared an excellent report on waste hauling, considering the cost to the community and the environment of having an open contracting system with 6 or more firms hauling waste on the same routes. You also received an external report on the possibility of constructing a new waste to energy incinerator. That latter report led to discussions of an alternative, reducing the amount of waste that's sent to the power plant, so that that amount could be burned in the smaller of the two steam boilers. These steps are commendable, but action is needed on a whole range of questions actions that address how we can reduce the volume of waste entering the system, how waste gets collected, what gets recycled and in what manner, how organic waste is collected, if at all, and whether it gets composted or anaerobically digested. Cities that have adopted net zero waste strategies provide a roadmap for answering many of these questions. Perhaps an even more difficult question is how a restructured waste management system is financed. Currently, city electric ratepayers pay the bulk of the costs of the countywide waste collection system through payments for refuse-derived fuel that the utility would not otherwise burn, for the volumes of gas consumed in the combustion of that waste, and for the utility's lost opportunity to purchase cleaner and greener energy, cheaper and greener energy from the grid. One thing that should be clear is that if we expect the electric department to meet the challenges of a warming climate and the adaptation to that reality, it will need to invest in more renewable resources, expand capacity to meet growing demand, strengthen its distribution infrastructure to incorporate customer-owned generation and storage, and upgrade metering and control systems. It needs to do all of these things while helping to facilitate local investments in energy efficiency and to help with the transition to electric vehicles and electric heating. To expect that the electric department can achieve these critical objectives while continuing its financial and operational obligations to the waste management system is an expectation that defies logic. While the public expects the council's careful consideration of any action, we hope you recognize the urgency of implementing comprehensive changes in the waste management system. And this is the handout we've been using in our conversations with the public about these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public forum and we'll move on to number 24, administration.
Can we test Gloria's mic? She says she can hear us, but we're not hearing her.
Yep.
So Gloria, if you could speak, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, sure.
All right, move on to item number 24, resolution awarding contract to JHB Group, Inc. for purchase of a mobile operations trailer, the amount of $214,233.60.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for allowing me to come tonight just to ask for award of bid for a mobile operations trailer from JHB Group. As you may be aware, the city of Ames in 1994 took an old side ride bus from the 1980s, added some tables to it, and made it an instant command bus. And we would take that bus out as a forward operating base when we had flooding in the community, when we had large-scale disasters. We used it. It has some radios in it. We would use it as an instant command center and also an area for rehab for people to get out of the weather. Unfortunately, the bus being from the 1980s didn't hold up very well. You had to have a special license to drive the bus. It just became a vehicle that wasn't getting used a whole lot and sat quite a bit. So we explored the option of replacing that with another type of bus or another mobile operations vehicle, and found that vehicles were pretty expensive. And once again, you ran into the issue of somebody needing a license. So we started to explore the idea of a trailer that we could tow with any city vehicle that wouldn't require a special license, that we could make multi-purpose, that any department in the city could use instead of just for emergencies, but maybe we could use it for Parks and Rec, a mobile Parks and Rec vehicle to get out in the community to help with registrations, for finance even to get out and help get people's utilities registered, whatever it may be. We didn't want it to be just an instant command vehicle. We want it to be a mobile city hall. We want to be able to go out and meet the public where they're at and be able to offer those services that are maybe in a fixed facility out in the neighborhoods. So a group of us got together. We were able to put some specifications together, sent out an RFP, representatives from Parks and Rec, Public Works, Police Department, IT, Fire. I think I said police already. Sent out the specifications and we got bids back. What we really looked at was the versatility of this vehicle. We want to serve as a rehab area, but also as workstations inside of the trailer. And so we sent out the specifications and we were happy to get a bid back that was the best value and also well within our budget. So I have a couple photos for you just to kind of give you an idea of what the trailer might look like. So this is a 27-foot trailer that JHB Group that we would like to award bid to. And up top on the left, this isn't a final design. This is working with Courtney, one of our design in the print shop designers down there, came up with just a sample idea. We're still working with it. But the main concept would really be in the rear where it says mobile, that underneath of that would be a magnet we'd put up, and we could put up mobile City Hall, mobile Parks and Rec, making it more versatile to reach out to the community. It comes with an awning, has a 33-foot mast with cameras on it, pan, tilt, zoom. It also has thermal imaging capabilities for lost people. On the exterior and underneath those cabinets, there is a TV and a mobile workstation. It's also set up on the inside with 3 workstations that allow us to operate our dispatch center if we needed to. This could also facilitate if an office wasn't able to function within the city, if finance had to move some people out of their office, we could move this in temporarily and that could be an office that they could work out of. Air conditioned, has heating, has things to get people out of the elements, as well as an awning on there. You can kind of see it set up in 2 different zones, the front being a workstation with computer hookups, Wi-Fi, everything to hook back to the city network. And then in the rear, more of a rehab area for people to come in. It'll have a service window so we can work from inside the vehicle and also take registrations if need be. Here's kind of a look on the outside with the TV out there. We could scroll if electric distribution was out for a power outage, they could have information there. We could pull out power cords for people to charge their cell phones. Just the versatility of the trailer is really what we were hoping to achieve to serve the community. There's kind of a look of what the inside could look like. A lot of options available. So tonight, before you asking for award a bid to JHB Group in the amount of that $214,233.60.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief?
Chief, when I see a bid that's so much lower than the others, I'm always just nervous that the math was done properly. Have we confirmed with JHB Group that everything was appropriate on their bid?
We have, yep. In fact, JHB Group is on Sourcewell, which is a cooperative purchasing agreement, and I think that's why they're able to be so competitive. And this is what they do. They design trailers for incident command, for police, for fire, for mobile operations.
Well, it's wonderful to have a bid that's so economical for the taxpayers. So thanks for your work on that.
And the funding was from what source?
The funding, so we have depreciated the old command bus that we had. So we have funding, enough funding in there from depreciating that vehicle to cover the cost of the new vehicle, the trailer.
Any questions? All right, open a public comment. Does anyone who wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Entertain a motion on resolution awarding contract to JHB Group, Inc. for the purchase of a mobile operations trailer in the amount of $214,233.60.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Garden,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Feeding Henson.
Aye.
Becher.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Rich. Council, it was brought to my attention that something got put on consent that should have actually not been put on consent, and that's item number 16, which is a resolution authorizing approval of loan agreement. And so I would entertain a motion to reconsider the motion to approve consent, and I will go through approve consent again, less item 16.
Move we reconsider consent.
Previous motion. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Feeding Henson.
Aye.
Becher.
Aye.
Garden.
Aye.
Thank you. And I entertain a motion to approve consent less item number 16.
Move that we approve consent minus item 16. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Corriere.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Feeding Henson.
Aye.
Becher.
Aye.
Garden.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Okay, item 16.
Great. Thank you. Sorry to take you backwards in your meeting tonight. Item number 16 is a resolution considering a bond sale of just over $12.5 million. The city uses GO debt to fund infrastructure primarily each year. This year, we also included $1 million for the indoor aquatic center and $500,000 for park system facility improvement. So we use a municipal finance advisor to do that. Today, I have Suzanne Gerlach from PFM to give us the results.
Thank you. Bond sale day, very exciting. So today we went to the market with the bonds. Moody's did affirm the AA1 rating of the city. So congratulations on that. These are 12-year GO bonds to fund the CIP, and they're paid for by taxes and the debt service levy. We received 6 bids today from over 40 different banks, with the true interest cost ranging from 4.04% to 4.19%. We are no longer in the days of 3%, unfortunately. We're now at 4%, but received excellent pricing and excellent feedback. So the winning bid came from KeyBank Capital Markets out of Cleveland, Ohio at 4.0456%. That second place bid came from Hilltop Securities out of Dallas, Texas at 4.09. I always like to look at the first place and the second place to see how close they were, just 5 basis points separating the first and second place bidder today. Pricing today, just 19 basis points, 0.19% over AAA scale. So that's very exciting to see the fantastic pricing in the market today. So with that, PFM formally recommends that the City of Ames award the $12,870,000 general obligation corporate purpose bond series 2023D to KeyBank Capital Markets out of Cleveland, Ohio at a true interest cost of 4.0456%. And happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
This may not make the news in many places, but this is really good for the taxpayers. And I think it's always a good place to point out the reason why we can borrow at this rate is because of the fiscal responsibility.
Yes.
And I would give a lot of credit to City Manager Shanker and the finance team for keeping us in a place where we can do this. Many cities can't possibly borrow at this rate. So this is where that hard work and the budgeting really pays off, where we can bond like this.
Yeah, and we're in a very unique place where we can borrow less than what you're actually earning on your cash, which is very exciting. You should be earning over 5% on your cash right now. So very exciting to be borrowing less at a rate than what you can earn on your cash. Very exciting.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Is there a motion?
Move.
Alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you. And we will open up public input. Is there anyone who wants to address council before council takes action on this motion? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Vicky Hansen,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Corey. Thank you for coming. All right, we'll move on. Item number 25, 2023-2024 Intelligent Transportation System Phase 3.
Good afternoon. For the phase 3 of the Intelligent Transportation System, we have a connection to the Homewood Golf Course. The Homewood Golf Course was deemed a Section 4F property by the DOT as part of the NEPA review based on the federal funding for the project. The Section 4F property is basically just saying that it's a publicly owned recreation area. As part of that determination, we need to understand the impacts of the project to the property. There are a couple ways of doing that. The way that we coordinated with the DOT was a de minimis impact, which is essentially saying we understand that there is some impact to the property, or that the project itself is using the property, but we feel that it will not alter the property in any way for its recreational uses. We certainly feel that that is the case for this project. The de minimis impact does require a public comment period. The DOT provided direction that we should put that on a city council meeting and have public comment as part of the item. And that's what we're here for tonight. If you have any questions, I can certainly answer them. I also have plans available if anyone needs to see them.
Questions for staff?
I didn't understand even why this is on the agenda because it seems like such a no-brainer. So will we even notice this is there?
No, it's going to be a fiber line that's installed in the ground. Most of it will be bored in with the project. We'll also be utilizing an existing conduit that connects into the clubhouse and into the utility room specifically. So, people in the clubhouse won't notice any work going on. It's going to be pretty limited to the utility room and just some boring operations. But it's just one of the steps that needs to be included. Normally you'd see this, if a road extension was being built through a park and you had impacts from that. The same rules are being applied here. It's just a little different type of construction.
May all our council agenda items be so easy. So thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? You might want to just comment briefly what the benefit would be to have the Homewood Golf Course building on the fiber network.
Yeah, it's a mutually beneficial site for us. It's an existing climate controlled area that we can put our hardware in. We don't have to construct anything or maintain anything on a different site. It also provides a connection point for Homewood Golf Course to be on city fiber and be removed from private utility connections.
Thanks, Mark. All right, we will invite and open up public comment. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this particular topic? See none, we'll close public comment. Any other questions for staff? Otherwise, entertain a motion to direct staff to maintain the current network design utilizing the Homewood Golf Course property as originally planned in the ITS master plan.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thanks, Mark. We'll move on. Item number 26. Ordinance establishing 35 miles an hour on Oakwood Road, University of Timberland, and 40 miles from Timberland to State.
So I'll give council a brief background on it. This is an ordinance change that is in coordination with a recent road reconstruction that occurred from University over to Timberland Road, where if you're familiar with Oakwood Road, it's essentially a rural section, and that project was an opportunity to really kind of apply a lot of our complete street standards to that street, bringing it much more to an urban, walkable, bikeable standard. Also gave us an opportunity with that design to bring the speed down from a suburban 45 to what you would expect to see in other subdivisions in town. So in the extent of that project lined up essentially with where Timberland is, so that's why west of there, it stays at that suburban standard where it's still a rural section, and east of there, that it's a 35, the proposed 35. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions? I'll just comment, and that is we got 35 to Timberland, 40 to State, and then when you go north on State, you're back to 35.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reason why it just couldn't all be 35? I understand the logic, but could council just say 35? Because there is a slight rise there by the village cooperative, and people already, I think they exceed even the listed speed limit. But is there any logic to allowing it to go up and then go back down again on State Street? I know that there's not very many connections past Timberland into that, but can you make a little input on that?
Certainly. When we knew of the project and the design on Oakwood, we actually did a speed study on the entire extent from State Avenue to University. When we looked at the speeds before the street project, there was an opportunity, essentially kind of naturally, there was almost a natural speed break to the east where people were already driving slower. So the project just helped enhance, re-encourage that slower speed limit. However, when you do get to the west, if council wanted to lower it to 35 and make that entire street 35, you certainly could, but you'd get extremely poor compliance to the west. I think what we had thought and talked about when we did the project through the project design, that as that urbanization would occur, like say the next segment of Oakwood gets reconstructed, we'd have the same opportunity that we do on the east half. So in order to make essentially a speed limit that makes sense to public, that Timberland was a good demarcation to split the speed limits. But we did look at safety, we did look at crash history, and there wasn't anything that I think you would have seen a stronger recommendation of that speed limit if we saw or had any kind of safety concern to the west, which we didn't see any crashes that were related to speed. They're mainly animal crashes and winter-related crashes, as you might expect. So the proposal for compliance, for the design to reinforce it, that's why you're seeing that Timberland breaking point. Yep.
Thanks, Damien. All right, we'll open up public comment. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this one? If you would state your name and you may start.
Yeah, my name is Will Dieterman. I just want to say I don't really know how much change from 40 mile an hour to 35 is going to affect the speed, especially since it's only half the street. I'd probably suggest docking it down to 30 mile an hour. If we're trying to make it a more walkable urban area and we are worried about safety, I mean, I don't know how much a 5 mile an hour decrease on half of the street would actually affect it. So,
Thank you, Will. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public comment. Any further questions? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
Move alternative one.
Second.
Thank you. And just a point of clarification, that is as posted in the agenda, 35 from Oakwood to University. I'm sorry, University to Timberland, and 40 miles Timberland to State. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Is that an aye, Gloria?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Damien. All right, we'll move on to item 27, professional service agreement with Shive Hattery.
Good evening. We're here about the South 16th Street widening project. So this will be from
Can you pull your
University.
mic a little closer to your mouth, please? Thank you.
This will be from University Avenue over to the Vetmed Trail. This will widen it out to 2 lanes in each direction with a shared use path on each the north and south side, and then a new traffic signal at South Riverside. So there's a temporary signal there at Christensen, but that will go away. And then there will be ADA improvements at University intersection. So we're working very closely with Iowa State University on this and their facilities planning, and then obviously athletics to plan the construction seasons. We plan for it to be 2 construction seasons. So design will happen through 24, and then the 25 and 26 construction seasons are what we will be proposing.
Questions?
So will the trail on the the north side be asphalt or concrete?
We're still making those determinations. At this time, we'll be looking at the resiliency and longevity, but also just the availability of materials. So if the rest of the street is going to be concrete, but you do one short stretch of trail in asphalt, then you pay a high price for that asphalt. So those are all considerations during our design.
Well, this is something I've been hoping for 10 years. And this is a critical component on our trail system to have that segment on the north side be completed. So thank you for making this a reality.
Yeah.
Other questions? This is a main connection point for obviously the vet med and also for traffic during football season. Can you just comment and assuage fears or apprehensions about what's going to happen when football season kicks in 25? Is that right?
Correct. So that's why we want to break it into 2 different construction seasons so that we can have it back open before the football game starts. So we'll really hit from spring until just before that football season so that it's back open to traffic during that time.
So we do it like Oakwood Road, part of it, and then the last connection point, or you can do one half and then one half, north
Right.
half, south half, or
So
what?
we'll be doing phases, and we're still working on that, but elevation change is obviously going to take into consideration. So it might be east and then kind of the west or north portions that will be focused on so that there's a full road in place for that football traffic.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll open up input. Does anyone that wants to address council on this item? Will?
Hi again. So I'm pretty on board with this whole thing. Obviously, the new bike lanes on both sides are great. Curbs, much needed in this area. I'm not a big fan of widening the lanes. You talked a little bit about it in the PDF that was written up about a congestion problem. I haven't seen this congestion problem. It may exist, but to my knowledge, it's not really there right now. Maybe at peak rush hours, but again, I've not seen any backups on University at all. But I also don't go to a lot of things at the Iowa State Center, so maybe that's for them. But there's a lot of people who live on that street, a lot of high density housing on that street, a park on that street, those trails on that street. And I think if, again, the big points, multiple points in there were about safety. And I think that's great. And I think that should be the main focus. And I don't see how widening the street is going to make it safer at all. And in fact, I think it'll be a lot less safe to cross the street. So thank you.
Thank you, Will. Anybody else? Close public comment. Maybe just define widening.
Yeah, so it is 1 lane in each direction on South 16th. And right now, traffic does back up from University well past Christensen Drive down to even South Riverside area. And so this will allow more storage capacity for 2 lanes in each direction so that those vehicles can get through there while also taking into consideration safety of the vet med crossing and pedestrians at those traffic signals.
So it'll be the same width as South 16th is to the east, then, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, entertain a motion.
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you, which is approval of the agreement.
Maybe
Well,
I'll just say one thing.
Sure.
So this road was never designed for the volume of traffic that it has. And so there are places where we can put roads on a diet, but sometimes we need to expand the roads to accommodate the traffic. There's been a tremendous amount of infill and intensification of residential areas. And so there was a lot of work that went into this, I know, in working with Iowa State. This was a big project, and our residents are going to be safer as a result of this. So thanks for your work on this.
You're welcome.
Roll call.
Aye.
Betcher. Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Rollins. Aye.
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 Thank you. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
All right, move on to number 28, staff report on the grant application for Chautauqua Park Ridgewood Historic District.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is coming to you tonight because back in August, you referred a request that had been received from Devon Lewis, who represents an ad hoc committee that formed to represent the residents of Chautauqua Park Ridgewood neighborhoods, and their request to have the city pursue a grant for nomination to the National Register of Historic Places. So back in September, staff did provide a memo, and council directed that this item be put on a future council agenda, and that's where we're at tonight. The Chautauqua Park Ridgewood neighborhood intensive level survey was completed a year ago under a CLG grant. So this is the next step, but one of the questions that we had as staff was if the neighborhood would support proceeding with a nomination. The reason being is that we had had a neighborhood meeting as part of the intensive survey, and at that meeting, there was overwhelming support, but the support was only representative of about 20% of the neighborhood. And so there was a need for neighborhood outreach, and that was the primary reason that this group of neighbors formed to create an ad hoc committee, was to determine if there was support from the neighborhood. And I will just mention that Devon Lewis can't be with us tonight. She had an emergency in her family, but we do have Helen Jensen, who's here as a representative of the ad hoc committee. So they did form an ad hoc committee, and they did take on the task of inventorying and talking with all the neighbors within the 150 properties represented. And the neighborhood does seek support to prepare an application for the National Register of Historic Places. So one of the concerns sometimes addressed is about how does this restrict a person's property? And the National Register does not place any restrictions on a personal property owner's ability to do anything with their property. It's only if that property were to receive federal assistance, then they're limited on certain things they can do because they've received funding. Currently in Ames, there's 3 National Register districts. There's the Ames Main Street Historic District, the Bandshell Park, and of course, Old Town Historic District. And so with that, we do, Ames is also a certified local government, so we qualify because we are in good standing as a certified local government. So we qualify as an applicant for 2 different state grant programs that can assist substantially in reducing the cost to the city in the preparation of an application. So we put out 3 options for you tonight as to how this could proceed. And recently we just found out that the fall grant window has been opened, and grants can be received through December 15th for the fall round of CLG grants. And that's a program that we've utilized before. Otherwise, the next available grant application would be in the spring. The city has anticipated that the cost for the cash match to the city would be approximately $6,000 to supplement the cost of hiring a consultant. This would be a lot different from the process that we used with the intensive level survey that ended up being a rather heavy burden on staff to complete the survey and get it submitted to the state. With a consultant involved, the staff time would be pretty minimal, but we're still trying to understand what that exact number might be based on other people's experience. So there's option 1, which would be to go ahead and proceed with pursuing a grant. Option 2 would be to direct staff to prepare a grant application, but wait to until we actually have the funding in place for next year's budget to determine if it would be funded under next year's budget. And the third would be to just put it on hold for the time being. So staff does recommend option 1 or 2. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And if you'd like to hear from Helen,
We'll get to that in a minute. First of all, council, any questions? Eloise, you mentioned not a whole lot of staff time required, but in a later item tonight under work plan, council's going to be considering, identifies 300 staff hour or up to 300 staff hours. And there's a lot of things that staff have on the plate and also priorities council has. Can you just comment on
I'd be happy
that,
to.
on that? Because I think that that's something that probably be weighing on council's mind as they're
Sure.
considering a decision, because we got a lot of things.
300 hours is a lot of hours. And actually, that's the amount of staff hours that was involved in the intensive level survey. But like I mentioned, that was quite different. We did not have an expert consultant bearing the weight of the work. We had students involved that needed to be overseen. And it was just a very different process. In looking at what other, I'm still trying to grasp some of, an exact number, but I think it could easily be under 150 hours and possibly as low as 80 hours. But those kind of understandings of time are part of what would be fleshed out during figuring out the scope of work and putting it into a grant application. And I will also add that with a grant application, that application would come before you for approval before it would be submitted. So there would be further opportunity to decide if you wanted to proceed with something at that time, if you did want us to start the process.
Thank you. All right, we'll open up public comment. You, if you want to introduce yourself, and you may start.
I'm Helen Jensen. I live at 929 Brookridge Avenue. It's in this area that is under discussion. I can comment most on the survey information exchange that we did over the summer. There were 150 houses in the area, and our ad hoc committee canvassed and talked to as many residents as we could find at home, left material, and developed a contact list. There was overwhelming support for pursuing this. Main questions were the difference between a national historic district and a local historic district. It has implications for the type of changes, and I think Eloise discussed that. And there are other people who are from the area in the room, and be happy to address questions or send them to somebody else.
Any other comments? Do you have any more other comments? No. Okay. If anybody else wants to address council, then you're welcome to come up.
I'm David Russell. My wife Joyce and I live at 1212 Parkway, which I learned from the report used to be 10th Street, but times have changed. It's really, if you have a chance to read it, it's an extraordinary historical document, and not just because I live in the neighborhood. Learned a lot of things about our city. Our neighborhood and the Country Club neighborhood were two of the first neighborhoods that were designed on the garden plan, which was the brainchild of the architect, the greatest landscape architect, the designer of Central Park and other places. And it's just something that we can really be proud of in Ames, and having that designation is, I think, very important.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, we'll close public comment. Any closing questions?
You want to clarify something on the staff report about either option 1 or 2? Do you want council to approve it now, or they have to place it on the discussion for the priority list? Program.
Yeah, I think the order in this agenda was to make sure you considered this item. And if you weren't interested in option 3, then that removes it from consideration in the prioritization. But if you are interested in the request, the question is this year or next year. That's option 1 or 2. You've seen the work plan, so you know what else is out there. You can talk it through now, or you can talk it through in 2 items down on the agenda if you want. It's really up to you. We just put it up first to make sure you had a discussion point for it before you looked at the overall work plan. And I think and as Eloise said, I think we put 300 hours in the work plan. That's not likely to be the number that would really go into this. It seems like we've modeled this a little bit after Cedar Rapids grant application and process. And if we are consultant dependent, then it does alleviate staff effort. And that is our number one goal, that it's consultant driven and not staff driven in this case. So it's likely well under 300, but as Eloise said, we don't know where it really lands because we haven't done a survey in a very long time as a city.
And I'm supportive of this. I don't know what to do between 1 and 2.
Well, it's just, council, I might just suggest that there's a lot, as you have probably read in the council or in the staff report regarding their planning division, work. It seems a little, appreciate it being up in front, but just to consider it by itself without everything else seems to be a little premature. So I would submit that you may want to consider it in concert with the work plan. And certainly it's an exciting undertaking, but there's a lot of things that we're asking staff to focus on too. So
If we went with option 2 and we had a consultant do it, does that sort of solve the problem? If we just make it the decision to just go with a consultant to do the work?
We're going to use a consultant no matter what. I think it's just the question of how much time of staff flexes into that as well. That's just what's murky here. A consultant will be the number one person doing the work, interacting with SHPO, will be obviously involved in administering the grant and then whatever neighborhood involvement's necessary, but we're not doing the work.
And I know this is coming up as another item here shortly, but with the number of things that you are hoping to complete by January, is it even realistic to think that this is something that you could commit time to this fall? Is it more realistic to look at option 2 where you have time in the spring to do it?
No. Eloise is
Like
very
it's
eager to do
always
the
busy,
project,
huh?
so she said, yes, we'll do it. So what you're talking about is this, the only reason December has some impetus around it is that is a deadline for a grant application. We would have to bring it back to you December 12th, I believe, for you to endorse it so that we could submit it. As Eloise understands the programming, it's the best choice to apply for the grant. There's another grant in the spring that's a little bit different. Preparing the grant application is not the big chunk of the hours. That's not a big thing. It's the administration after you get the grant. So whether we do that in November or do that in April to submit that grant, that's not the big part. It's the timing for the actual survey itself.
Okay. And option 2 is the one that gives you a little more time.
Option 2 would program it for probably applying next fall for the work to be in 25, 26.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's more time.
So
less.
yeah, it's the survey work would be delayed until 25 versus the survey work
Mayor?
in 24.
go ahead, Gloria,
Mayor, I have a comment.
please. Go ahead.
It seems to me that with the professional consultant, the work should be reduced considerably. I would be very surprised if it were anywhere near 300 hours. So council should take staff's advice on the limited amount of time it would involve. And the second thing is, we all know that the work plan will not get lighter in the future. And I would hate to see us wait on this because I don't think it's going to help us to push it off to next year. We always have more than we can handle on the work plan. And as a certified local government, we do have a certain responsibility for identifying new historic districts and moving them forward. This district seems like a no-brainer, and I would expect that a professional consultant would have no difficulty selling it to SHPO.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Entertain a motion.
I would move alternative 1.
A second.
If we submit the grant application now by the December deadline, and then in our next discussion, we're talking about the work plan, is it time sensitive then? If we receive the grant, then does it have to kick off right away, or can we prioritize it then at that point?
From Eloise's recent research, we think roughly a year to expend the funds. So if we choose to apply for the grant, you should expect this as a summer of 24 started project. You just have to look at it that way. And I would hate to apply and then not take the funds. That's not really a choice.
No, and I'm not suggesting that. I just wasn't sure what the.
I think you have to assume we start July 1st, 2024 if we get the grant.
To me, we already have quite a bit of sunk cost in this with staff time already, right? So we might as well finish it off. And I think Gloria's right in that the consultant hopefully takes some of the load off and
Majority.
Would there be any way that our ad hoc committee could continue helping?
No.
No? Okay.
This needs to transfer into a professional environment. It has to be done by a consultant.
But we can create the scope of work for the consultant to put most of the burden there, correct?
That's our intent. Yep.
Those made the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. So we will bring the grant application to you in December for final approval of said bidding. That's what this kicks off.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eloise. On item number 29, staff report, reduced affordable housing parking rate. You want to introduce your new sidekick there?
Sure. This is Amelia Schoenemann. She hasn't been with us at council working for the city. She's been with us since end of August. So this is our first project for her with you.
Welcome, Amelia.
Thanks, and good evening. So this item is the first initiative on your affordable housing strategy to develop more affordable units in the city. Parking adds costs and decreases flexibility in terms of space design, so right-sizing parking is important, especially to incentivize affordable housing development. The current requirements for affordable housing units are the same as market rate units, so we see the same parking rates applied. So to develop the new rates that you see before you tonight, we counted actual utilization rates at affordable housing developments in Ames, as well as looked at other peer communities and found that a rate closer to 1 space per unit would be appropriate. At the developments in the Ames community, we saw rates under 50% in terms of utilization of the parking provided on site. And other cities did provide typically around 1 space per unit for 1 and 2 bedroom units, and 1.5 spaces for units with more bedrooms. So the proposed ordinance targets households that have a 60% area median income level, which is the highest income level for a low-income rental household under most state and federal programs. The ordinance also has a 2-tiered approach. So there's a staff approval process and a council approval process. With staff approval, we're a little bit more limited in what we can approve. So it would be 1 space per unit for units with bedrooms below 2, and 1.5 spaces per unit for 3 and 4 bedroom units.
How does a half space work?
I think typically you've got multiple units. So you're going to end up with either a whole number or some fraction thereof, and then we round up.
I see. Thank you.
On the total, not on the per unit basis. So
Sure.
it's just a plus or minus of 1 space at the end of the calculation.
I see. Okay.
And then the staff approval also requires an agreement, and the agreement states that you have to provide affordable housing for a 30-year time period, and that 40% of the units are dedicated to households at that 60% AMI level, among other requirements. Staff, if we do have concerns, can ask that council reviews that agreement and approves the reduction. And then there is another council approval option if we are within a quarter mile of a transit use. And then if we're targeting deeper levels of affordability, we can also come to council to grant further reductions for projects that target households below 30% AMI, which is extremely low income households, and on a permanent basis. So at the end of the affordability period, we're not requiring any additional parking if it transitions to another use or to market rate housing. And this ordinance, the way it's presented to you tonight, is how our Planning and Zoning Commission recommended it as well. So the options before you are to direct staff to prepare the ordinance as we present it. You could also direct us to prepare the ordinance at a different rate, for instance, 1.5 spaces per unit, regardless of bedroom count, or prepare it with other modifications. A fourth option could be direct us to come back with additional information. And finally, you could direct us not to pursue this ordinance at this time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
Amelia, welcome.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions. So when we surveyed the existing affordable housing units, how was that survey done?
So we picked peak hour times, which was 5:30 in the morning, and went out and counted actual cars in the parking lot. I did go out again at around 9:30 p.m. And Kelly checked one as well at around that time, and there was a lower utilization rate. So we made sure we were at a peak hour.
Okay. And I read the summary of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and there was some dissent in that. Could you summarize what were the concerns surfaced in planning and zoning?
Yes. So I believe there were two concerns. One was about the 30-year affordability period. Some commissioners felt that was very long. I think what we came to was that that's typical for most low-income housing tax credit developments. That's a requirement of that program already. There are other state and federal programs that have lesser timeframes. However, the city does administer the home funds, for instance, so we can require a longer affordability period, and that's what we did with the Baker subdivision as well. And then there was a concern from a commissioner that if we have lesser parking, we will have spillover parking onto neighborhoods, whether that's during the use, when it's an affordable housing use, or after, when it's converted to a market rate use. And I think the discussion there led to the fact that a lot of these developments won't be all affordable housing units. Typically, you do see a 40-60 split. So those units that aren't the affordable units will still be required to meet the full parking rate. So it's not as big a reduction as it appears on the surface. And additionally, at the end of the 30-year period, these will likely be, mid-level apartments. They're 30 years old at that point. Or a different use, so the parking rate might not be as high.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that summary. This was one of those areas before I got on council, I had no clue about how these number of parking stalls impacted development. And so it's been a great learning curve for me. And so it seems like there are two ditches to avoid. So if we have too much parking, then that limits the way in which that property can be developed, and we're losing desired intensive development, and it impacts the value of the property. Have not enough parking, then there are negative impacts of that. So this is sort of the effort to be Goldilocks and look for, right sizing this. I am very concerned in particular for low income housing that we make sure that we have adequate parking, because for people that are struggling financially, that automobile is the pathway out of being low income. It's the opportunity to have transportation to a job. It's a way of having kids go to a daycare, having kids participate in sports and other extracurricular activities. So it's a really important lifeline to getting out of being low income. So it's critical that we get this right. And I I think you've done an admirable job. I appreciate the attention to other communities, peer communities, and it seems like you've given us the tools for supporting this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions? Gloria, do you have anything that you wanted to ask?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll open up public comment. Does anyone want to address council on this item tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Any closing questions? Otherwise, Amelia did a nice job laying out the 5 different options. Is there a motion relative to any of those options?
I would move option 1.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I just like how there is also a staff approval level too. So Tim's always asking for that, just how can we empower staff to make some of these exceptions. So I'm really happy that's in there too.
All right, those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Thank you.
So we'll be back with an actual ordinance for first reading here in the next month.
Okay. We'll move on to item number 30, Planning Division Work Plan Update.
All right. So City Council, we're here again after about 18 months of discussing the long list of interests of the community of Ames. Some of them are generated by yourselves, some are generated by the community, and some are generated by staff. So we've been together on this for a couple of years, so I'm not going to go through a lot of it. I identified at the beginning of the staff report essentially what is underway right now. When you look at the attachment A, the yellow boxes should reflect things that have action steps that are identified to happen essentially in the next 3-ish months. And almost all of those will be concluded. So the yellow items on attachment A should be wiped off of the slate by roughly February, January, that time period. So what I'm really looking at when I started to put this together for you is what would we start after January? I am not asking to start anything in November, December, or January. So with that, we tried to give you some history where in the past you've looked at trying to program 3 or 5 larger projects. That's a chunk of time. We've typically managed in our budget to think of a roughly 20% of our staff time as being committed to long range or policy type projects. We calculated in this that 1,200 hours really fits the next 12 to 18 months, not a 2-year time frame. It would be higher if you were to look out longer. But it also leaves time for other things to be inserted. As you know, you're going to get a request in 8 weeks that you've never heard of that you're going to want to deal with. So that 1,200 hours is a cushion. It's not a cap. It's a baseline planning number for us. There's no magic to it there. So it does help you get a sense, though, of comparing magnitudes of project. We talked about the Chautauqua survey. Is it 150 hours? Is it 300? It helps you kind of understand what does that really mean. And one reason why it's not hard and fast as well is I have different staff with different interests, different expertise. They will overlap. We don't do these sequentially. We start something and then we start something else and we work through hearing processes. We work through public meetings. We work through different stages of drafting things. So again, it's not sequential. The 1,200 is just a good number to start to think about the big projects. Unfortunately for us, or fortunate depending on how you look at that, we have a number of things that are not prioritized. And there's significant things on this list. It's not a bunch of little text amendments. Some years we can say, here's 7 text amendments we can knock out in 9 months and move on. A lot of these are longer term projects that have impacts for many years for the community. And also, unfortunately, a lot of the steps are not defined either. So it's very hard for me to tell you that's for sure a significant project, or maybe it's a medium level project. So for tonight, I'm really hoping that we do not have to adopt a plan tonight. It's a good chance to talk through some of the projects if we need to, give you a chance to think about maybe what your priorities are, and we can set up, we can prioritize them tonight. We can look at it after you've had more information to come back. Another way to look at it, I mentioned, was you could define to city staff what you want to get accomplished and then have staff say how that can be done. In this report, I put it the other way, saying this is how much we think we can do. Which projects do you want to slot into that? You could define it backwards to us and say, accomplish this. How will this get done, Kelly? That's another way to look at it. So I can walk through the individual projects if you like. Another thing that's in the background here is a question came up, well, what about development? Is that going to impact the 1,200 hours? I already have a baseline assumption that we actually have projects to work on from development. That's always the base understanding. If those projects don't materialize, it actually opens up more time to take on these policy planning projects. So development does not impact the 1,200 hours. That's already assumed to be accommodated in our normal work hours. So some of the more significant ones under the new category, which are ones that you've never really prioritized, include some of the downtown planning items. You have some of the climate action plan initiatives that you looked at for passive homes and net zero ready homes. We have some other issues, some smaller ones that we identified that are those customary small projects from Alliant and the Pullman Street one. We talked about Pullman Street a meeting ago about the missing infrastructure ordinance for that land. And then Alliant has asked for some deferrals of certain improvements and connection fees. It's not a big project for planning because it's multi-department and it does have some text amendment language that would go with it, but it's not a big item. It's something that we would normally just insert into the process as a referral. In addition to these projects, I had one in here that's just Plan 2040 implementation. 2 years ago, that was the main driving force of our choices. We went through Plan 2040 adoption and came back and said implementation chapter has a whole host of things to address, maybe commercial zoning, infill options, housing policy, all kinds of things, beautification planning. That's still a category of things that aren't identified one by one on here. You have an attachment B that represents that older list I gave you at the last time we did the work plan. There's always more that can be on that too. So there's additional items always there beyond just what's listed here. So I think at this point, I would rather kind of respond to questions about the projects, any discussion on the scope of projects and where does this lead for council?
Council, I'd like to suggest, in about 2 months, we'll have our retreat, and I think that'd be an appropriate time to be really looking at a broad categorization of priorities, and some already exist. And in lieu of going through each of these and trying to prioritize them during our council briefing this afternoon, Kelly did come in and we, as he alluded to, one option would be is instead of us telling him what he should be doing and prioritizing it, is give him big picture goals, objectives, and then let staff help us understand how those would fit in. And I think, Rachel, you mentioned some of these might even be blended together essentially for efficiency, but also trying to accomplish things. But as mentioned, a few items ago, there's 34 items listed here. Doesn't include the items for the 2040 plan. And may I just suggest, certainly if you want to ask questions, you certainly can, but if there's anything on this work plan that you think should be struck tonight that you might have noticed that, this really is not a high priority or we've lost interest in it, otherwise maybe it's just take it under advisement, maybe get a little information from Kelly. And then I'm just looking forward to, in early January, potentially either the first or second weekend in January, is just doing our biannual. Is that right? Yeah, biannual. Semi-annual is twice a year, every other year. Goal setting, but also I think that's an opportunity to look at some priorities and see where we're at as a community, and have staff help us figure out how these can fit in and accomplish that. Maybe things will become a lot more clear as a result of that, versus spending an hour or more talking about priorities, here tonight and try and go back and forth essentially. But I just submit that to you as for your consideration. And if that is acceptable and don't hear any objection, I think we would proceed that way. And then we'll just invite you to ask Kelly if you have any questions on some of these projects, or maybe you could just help us with what the P's, the X's, and the new stand for in the second column. They weren't. I presume was prioritized, not prioritized, and or they were a new item to the list.
Right. So the WP column is something that's been by council said it's on the work plan. Some of those, or most of those, have a prioritization to do a next step. Not all of them. Like, for example, the affordable housing strategy, we did the report, but it got tabled. So there isn't a P by that because there's no next step identified by council right now, but it's still on the work plan because it was tabled. For the most part, the P items represented by the yellow boxes show when you're going to get an action step to complete that task, or something significant is going to happen. The X's really mean there's not an identified next step at this point. In the past, we've denoted things that we didn't get prioritized, but wanted to keep on the list for consideration as the parking lot items. There's only a few of those. Last time we did delete a significant number of old parking lot items. So there's only a few there. And new means that it's essentially something since June probably that you have yet to really define in scope or put into the work plan as a priority to do. It was just, hey, we need to, it's been referred, put it on the list to talk about. And that's what new really represents. And one other comment, when you look through the yellow, just to give you a quick sense of what does this mean over the next couple of months, a few of them are substantial to help guide you maybe on next steps. One of the things that you asked for was a report about administrative exceptions, and that was to deal with like staff flexibility and approval processes and whether that would help some loads in the future. That staff report is going to come to you in November. One of the bigger ones out there is the redirection areas. So that is one that you asked for a report to walk through what Plan 2040 identified as places where development may be suitable. And we'll give you kind of a breakdown by area of the city, what really goes into that in terms of our thought process of what the amount of time and energy that goes into that, and maybe likelihood of demand for redevelopment there. So if that is like something that maybe 10 years from now, there's a market for, we don't need to do it. Maybe there's a market for it next year, so it warrants being addressed right now. So we'll have a separate report on that in December. Another significant one, there's two other significant ones. By Thanksgiving, you will get a report about the short-term housing task force recommendations. So there's a lot of unknowns on what your priorities out of that request are, but you'll be getting a staff report back there. So again, by Thanksgiving, you'll be looking at that and you'll be able to set out some initiatives of interest to you, which then slot into the work plan eventually as well. And another one that's been out there kind of floating that I think will be coming back to the council soon is the idea of a downtown planning effort in combination with Downtown Ames, the Main Street group. So it's not a city-led initiative. It's a request that came to you this summer that you referred back to them and said, return to us with a scope of work so we know what you're thinking. I think that discussion has matured to the point where possibly as soon as November 14th, you're going to get a draft scope of work and understand what downtown is looking for and what staff's role in that process is as well. So you can see like 3 or 4 of these larger ones that are yet to be defined. I think in the next 2 months, you're going to have a better understanding of what they are.
Questions?
Kelly, I just had just a couple things. This was new for me, and maybe I'm just not understanding it. Could you walk us through, it's 28, 29 on the new list. So 29 says climate action plan, annexation policy for net zero and passive homes. Could you summarize what that's about?
So when we accepted the climate action plan in June under the big moves list, is that what it was called? We had 3 items related to zoning because we can't statutorily adopt a different building code related to energy usage. We have to live with the state efficiency requirements. That doesn't limit our ability through the zoning ordinance to negotiate things with developments. So there's 3 different ways to look at establishing through zoning policies or standards that support lower energy usage. One of them was to have a policy that when you newly annex to the city, have an annexation agreement that says you're going to commit to some type of development with some percentage of units that would accomplish this goal. Another one of those tasks was to look at what zoning standards could we actually embed into the ordinance that are mandatory. Again, I can't control what appliances or anything you have in your house, but there are some other things maybe that you could do through zoning. And then the third was, would there be any incentive program to support someone actually building a passive home through tax abatement or something else to help actually get these things constructed. So there's 3 separate tasks.
And so this is where I'm getting a little fuzzy on my recollection. So is this something we would require as a mandatory aspect of the new construction?
If I walk, so One of them could partially require certain things to support net zero, but it would never actually be able to require net zero on its own, because that would be intruding into the energy code requirements. The annexation policy would be a decision by the council at the time of annexation to enter into an agreement where the developer commits to doing it. So they would be held accountable to that commitment because they're voluntarily agreeing to do 10% of their homes as passive homes. And then they would have to do that over time. But that would be an agreement with the city and the developer. Then the third one is an incentive program, so that wouldn't be mandatory.
And it's been too long. There was an email that we received that indicated the price differential by requiring the net zero ready. So I'm all about doing this on a voluntary basis. I think that's terrific if someone wants to do that. But to require this, do you happen to remember what the price differential was?
I don't. As usual with this stuff, if you weren't planning to do anything and you were told at the last minute to change, it's a substantial difference. If you know at the beginning you have to incorporate the features into those selections at the beginning, it reduces that cost a lot. And net zero ready, if we to go back in time, is to design the home to use as much energy as it would generate if solar was ever installed on the site. So you don't have to install the solar, but you design essentially an energy budget for the home based on what you could generate through a solar system if you installed it. And that's more efficient than the minimum standards of the energy code. But that's something that's worked through with the different building types and the sizes and what their orientation is in different elements of it.
And I appreciate that. I mean, this is going to be a policy issue for us to work through. I'm really nervous about making housing more expensive at a time when we're in a housing crisis in Ames. And we just got this email, I think it was yesterday, showing the housing starts in the area. Ames year to date, 30 housing starts, Ankeny 352, Waukee 308. So literally 10 times the number of housing starts. And that's pretty staggering. And so if we really are interested in housing affordability and creating an opportunity for more people to live in Ames and not force them to live in surrounding communities, we better take those housing start differentials really seriously and figure out why is it that Ankeny is building 10 times the number of houses that we are. And so that's going to have an impact on the price of the house in Ames. And so, and then this has such a tremendous rippling effect on our schools. If families can't afford to live here, that means fewer children in our schools, and on and on and on. So as we think about the prioritization, the pole star for me right now is how do we move the needle on housing? And so that's, at least for me, that's going to be sort of the standard by which I look at things. And I'm apprehensive. I like all of the things you said in terms of incentivizing, and I'd be willing to spend city dollars on subsidizing some of the net zero ready alternatives. But I'm really nervous about making it a requirement. I think that seems counterproductive for our goal of trying to bring housing costs down.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, we'll proceed on the basis that everyone's in agreement that we'll do some prioritization and goal setting in January. And go ahead, Brahman.
I was just going to ask, is there any direction you feel like you need before that? Because that'll be cutting it pretty close to when we make those calls and then when you would kick off on that work. So do you need like a gap filler of a small project in the meeting? You know, I
think you're going to have a couple of bites at that apple with the Housing Task Force report and the Reinvestment District report, or not Reinvestment District, sorry, Redirection Area report. So if there's something there that really piques your interest as, oh yeah, now I understand, I want to do that, I think you can pick at those meetings to say, do that next, and then come back with the bigger picture, longer term evaluation.
Okay.
I think, to be fair, the two that might be lost in this conversation is the Pullman and the Alliant Energy request. So if there was action to refer those to staff to authorize those to proceed, that would be the only thing they're asking for. Alliance asking for that to move ahead this winter and not wait till spring.
And it's not currently in the works.
It is not. It came in as a request and you referred it to staff for consideration. It's one of three things affects planning. The other two affect public works and utilities. So it's not a big issue for us. It's a relief on a paving requirement for driveways is the zoning issue.
Would it be helpful for council to give you some direction saying that if time would allow in the interim, that those would be moved to the forefront, or is it something?
So usually like on the Alliant one, we would say if they're authorized to apply for the text amendment. So it's on them to actually follow through. I hate it when we initiate it and we do it and then it doesn't happen. So I prefer to say you apply for it.
They're aware of that.
They are not, because there's been no action. So if there was a motion tonight to allow them to proceed, then we would tell them and they could kick off that process. For Alliant, there is. And then
But
Pullman-
it's not all for housing. It's not all for planning and housing. Some of
Correct. The planning and housing is a minor text
Correct.
amendment, like change a sentence that we don't object to. Pullman is the one where it's related to streets and sidewalks ordinance and it involves public works and a little bit of time, but it applies. It doesn't have to be done in the next few weeks, but it's something that we probably could easily get done over the next few months.
So if we make a motion to allow them to apply for a text amendment, then you would communicate with them that.
Yep.
Well, and also that we go ahead and deal with their other issues.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we would, if you,
Staff to move ahead with those.
yeah, we would just contact them and allow them to proceed then through the processes.
So I would make a motion then that we ask staff to reach out to Alliant and inform them that they can proceed with requesting a text amendment and submit their other requests to be reviewed by Public Works.
They've already submitted, they've requested that. You just would authorize staff to
Yeah.
move ahead with dealing with, bring those back to council. Those other issues too, right?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. How about Pullman and street and what's the other?
Take on your
Oh, yeah. I guess I was sort of lumping those two together.
Yeah, they're two different things. One of Alliance issues crosses over a little bit on sidewalk deferral, which is a
Okay.
Chapter 22 issue.
Got it.
Pullman's obviously a lot different than Alliance issue with the unpaved street, but they related a little bit.
It's easy if you do that one.
There's gonna be work with Public Works. It's not one line. We're gonna have to give you a proposal so you understand what's changing. We talked about that last time. It's not time intensive. It's just something we can fill in over the next couple months.
All right. So I would move that we ask staff to proceed with,
Changes to Chapter 22.
yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Move second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And be 6-0. All right.
Yeah.
And just to be fair, I think the only other one that's outstanding is, and it's in your non-agenda packet, is the HPC's request about Chapter 31 edits. I put it in here because it's in your non-agenda packet. You had not seen it till you got it in that packet. As I understand the request, the first section talks about changes related to ADUs and the permitting process. That's going to happen whether you refer it or not. It just needs to happen with the ADU stuff that we're working on. The other sections are a little bit more asking for staff support to consider options of altering the Chapter 31 Historic Districts ordinance and then potentially preparing design guidelines and other options for approval processes for council to say go out for public comment on. So it's a new initiative, a new idea beyond kind of the scope of Chapter 31 as it is today. And so that's one that does not have to have action. That's maybe something that's better suited to your January goal setting. There's no, the ADUs is going to happen, right? So that doesn't need to be acted on. There's nothing else pressing any Chapter 31 update at this point. So if you're going to look at a dozen things in January, I would say that should be a dozen plus one.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm wondering, Kelly, can you tell us, or can we ask HPC to clarify why they think
Absolutely.
Chapter 31 needs to be revised?
Yeah, I can communicate that to them. So I can tell them that it's been not tabled. It's put on a list for future consideration and council's asking for more information. That's easy to communicate.
I would move that we ask HPC to clarify why they believe Chapter 31 needs to be revised, as they suggest.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carried. All right. Thank you, Kelly. You're welcome. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item number 31. CDBG Home Consolidated Annual Performance Report. Ms. Vanessa.
Good evening, everyone. Before you is our CAPER report, the Consolidated Annual Performance and our evaluation of our program from 22 to 23. I kind of summarized the middle of it as how much we had spent during the year, which was just under $250,000. That included administration. We got about $51,000 of program income, and we spent about 130 some thousand on acquisition, demolition on blighted structures, and doing some additional rehab and disposition out at the Baker subdivision lots. Under our home program, we spent just over $22,000 just on home program administration, which yielded us a low-income tax credit award. So that was time well spent on that. And we closed out our CARES program with just finishing out about $9,000 of program administration as well. And so that's kind of recapped our year. It was kind of cut short because we had to stop and get our home art plan approved, which kind of cut short of doing all of our activities for 22, 23 to get that in by the deadline of March 31st. So with that, that's kind of a short, sweet overview, unless you have some questions.
Any questions? All right. Entertain a motion approving the submittal of the city's 2022-2023 CAPER.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Fourier,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Feeding Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. All right. Move on to item number 32. Any questions for staff on the traffic signal program? All right, I declare a public hearing on the 2022-2023 traffic signal program for State and Mortensen to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, declare a public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Entertain motion on resolution approving final plan specifications awarding the contract for 2023-2024 traffic signal program to Klein Electric, doing business as Heartland Underground Solutions of Des Moines, Iowa, in the amount of $140,755.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Fourier,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Feeding Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you. And entertain a motion on resolution awarding traffic signal pole purchase to Valmont Industries of Omaha, Nebraska, in the amount of $64,676 for the 2022-2023 traffic signal program.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Rollins,
Aye.
Fourier,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Feeding Hansen,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Do we open a hearing? Do we open a hearing or set it up?
Okay. All right. Well, Vanessa, I screwed up. And we're going to back up to item number 31. Should open and close a public hearing on the CAPER. Thank you, Brian, for being attentive to that. So I'll declare the public hearing on the 2022 or 2023 CDBG Home Consolidated Annual Performance Report to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. My apologies for not, thank you, Brian, for catching that.
Fine, Mayor, thank you.
There was a lot of drama there. There might have been some public comment.
Never know.
It could happen.
All right, moving on. Item number 33, hearing on amendments to the downtown urban revitalization area. And council, I asked the question during our our briefing, if people who would be omitted from the urban revitalization area were contacted, and the answer was no. And so before we go through this whole situation, the question is do you want to have notice sent out to these property owners that this change is going to be occurring? And if so, we would table this and we can open the hearing and continue it to the next council meeting, and then cover this in detail at that point in time. If you feel you want to have that done, if not, we'll just move on with the hearing and move on. So there's Kelly, there's three property owners. Is that correct? That are
Yes,
affected by it because the URA is being reduced in size a little bit.
So there's 3 property owners and probably 5 or 6 businesses. So who, depending on who pays the real estate taxes, you could look at it as 3 or 6 people affected by that change.
Is there a timing issue?
There is not. As long as it's done, as long as the ordinance is adopted and effective before the end of the year, that's all it's necessary to let people that did projects this year be eligible for abatement starting in January.
Mark, is there any kind of due process issue in a situation like this where we don't provide notice?
So Iowa code requires published notice for the amendment. That was done. We just did not do a courtesy mailing to the individual.
I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying. It wasn't like we didn't. We're doing this
we
under
met the
oath of
minimum
darkness.
state law requirement. We just didn't a courtesy mailing requirement.
And it could be that those property owners maybe explain why we're changing it to.
Yeah, so our recommendation to change it was based on that the zoning on Kellogg no longer is intended to be downtown service center. The facade grant program was extended to that area 10 years ago, but with Downtown Gateway, we have different expectations for redevelopment. We're not trying to promote rehab of existing buildings and Main Street type facades. We're looking for intensification. So we recommended removing that incentive because it seemed to contradict our overarching goal for infill and intensification here.
Well, if its timing is not an issue, then why not just send the notice and we'll just pick this up later?
Okay.
I don't know that I'd rather err on the side of giving notice. I think your point's well taken.
And you're only concerned about the boundary change, not all the properties within and the criteria being changed.
No, it was just letting the people know who own the properties that we're changing it. It's just a courtesy notice. Letter. They may never respond to it. They may understand that. That's fine, but at least they know about it before the boundaries get changed. That was all.
So I have very strong reservations about the publication by notice. So I just question how effective this is. Who actually is paying attention to this? So I don't want to hang my hat on publication by notice. It's a legal sort of way we can sort of check the box, but I question its effectiveness. So, Mayor, are you looking for a motion to?
Yeah. So I'll do is I'm going to declare a public hearing on amendments to the downtown urban revitalization area to be open, and then entertain a motion to continue the hearing until November 14th. Is there a motion to continue the hearing?
I move to continue the hearing until November 14th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And Mark, do we need a motion to also table this item? The hearing has been being continued and it's open right now, but do you recommend that we also just officially table the item until the 14th also?
Yeah, I would just do that just to be safe.
All right, thank you. Entertain a motion to table item 33 until November 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carried.
We need a motion now to direct us to know.
Sure, go ahead. Is there a motion to notify the affected property owners of the changing borders? Not all of them, but just the ones
So
that
the
will be
100 block of
eliminated
Kellogg
from
is
it.
what
Yeah.
we're talking
Property
about.
owners
Well, who would you recommend?
for the businesses.
So we can do both. It's 10
That's-
letters. It's
All affected parties in the areas that are being eliminated.
100 block of Kellogg.
Is there a motion?
I move that we notify property
All
in the
affected.
100
All affected
block
property. Yeah.
of Kellogg of this pending amendment
Okay.
to the downtown urban revitalization area,
So is that owners and
owners and businesses.
Is there a second?
second?
Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Item number 34, a hearing on zoning text amendment for landscape and open space exceptions related to EV charging equipment. Any questions for staff? Declare a public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on item number 34? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain motion on first passage of ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right. I'll move on to disposition of communications to council. The first is the memorandum from Historic Preservation Commission. And motion's already been made to get some feedback from them.
It's in the prioritized, you have to be prioritized list, right?
Correct. Second is an email from Rebecca Flint request for limiting hours of garbage hauler operations.
I would just move that we direct the mayor to respond that we're looking into our solid waste systems, and while we can't guarantee that will be one of the items we'll be looking at, we are looking at that system.
Okay. There's a second. All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And the third is great news from
Great news.
Parks and Recreation Director. Do you want to comment on that,
Just
Steve?
our Forester Gabby, she did a great job of securing, hopefully securing an $810,000 grant for tree planting for the next 5 years. What's amazing is there's no local match required either. So I want to compliment her for securing the funds. We had to respond before this meeting to indicate we would accept the award if we got it. So we couldn't have a special meeting. So we wrote a letter saying we would, subject to you approving any kind of grant agreement that will follow. So we just wanted to give you information about this. It'll come back to you with the final formal agreement later on. Good news, though. Good news for one of our employees.
All right. We'll move on to council comments. Tim, we'll start with you tonight.
It's great to have our Ames Tribune reporter with us today. We value and appreciate you and look forward to working with you. That's all I have tonight.
Dita?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Nothing for me.
Nothing tonight.
Rylan?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Jeff?
So I will be brief. The joint city council agenda was sent out not too long ago. If you haven't had the chance to look through that, if you do intend to come tomorrow, I'd take a second just to peek through it. It's a pretty basic outline. It'll probably be a lot of discussion and a lot of just back and forth. There's like time guidelines on there, but those aren't too strict. But other than that, kind of. So
Looking forward to it. And council, just know it starts at 5 o'clock tomorrow night. I think we
5
talked
o'clock,
about 6. It goes from 5 until 7. I always look forward to it, Jeff. Thanks for getting it organized. And I do believe that some council members will not be able to make it, but those that can make it, we're going to be there too. I know I'll be there. I think Rowan for sure will be in there. And, Anita mentioned it. And hopefully Gloria can make it, but others had previous commitments. But we'll be there to engage with you. So
Well, regardless, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. Gloria?
I hope I'll be feeling better to attend the meeting tomorrow night. And I appreciate you all putting up with me via Zoom.
Feel better, Gloria.
Yeah, get better soon.
Maybe not.
Thank you.
Don't come tomorrow.
Those are,
That's right. Don't come tomorrow. It's not important.
those are well-timed coughs. We're sorry you're not feeling well.
Yes.
All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.